This time on the Highland Woodworker.
There's one magazine article that came out with, she paints with wood, and I thought, well, that's really pretty accurate because you are paying attention to the grain and you're trying to incorporate that grain like your brush strokes so that it kind of helps flow with the picture or piece that you're making.
Judy Gale Roberts' Intarsia designs are out of this world. We'll take a tour of her amazing work and learn all about this unique woodworking style. Erasing layout lines without compromising your project. Popular Woodworking Magazine has the solution. These stories and more, this time on the Highland Woodworker. Hello, I'm Charles Brock and I'm a Highland Woodworker. I just love going to Highland Woodworking in Atlanta, Georgia, and HighlandWoodworking.com on the web to find the very best tools that I need for my workshop and my projects. From animals to astronauts, Judy Gale Roberts takes dimensional marquetry to a whole new level. The technique is called Intarsia, and she invited us to her East Tennessee workshop to give us a tour of her artwork and her process in our Moment with a Master.
Well, what you're seeing here is since 1988. This has been a slow process. So many years ago, we called them wood murals. And then we found out by sending photographs to the National Woodcarvers Association that there was a name for it, and they sent it back in a letter. This is way before emails, and had it spelled out. So I'm not sure of the pronunciation. I think from the South we say Intarsia. Intarsia sounds a little more exotic. So, but it's a form of inlay. It was popular in Italy in the 15th century, and the difference, though, is between what I'm doing today and the Intarsia from back then was that theirs was still flat, but they used thicker wood, and it was actually carved into and inlaid into surfaces, and then they'd use a plane on top. But so this is really like onlay, but it's really close. It's Intarsia, like the current modern Intarsia. I don't know what you would call it, but it's evolved to be dimensional, mostly because I like the dimensional part.
Yeah.
So,
well, show us some of your work and
okay,
kind of explain it.
Sure. Like I said, these pieces vary in age from 1988 to the more current pieces, and I really pride myself in not using stains. So most of the wood that you see is all the natural color. If I'm doing a flag or something, blue is one of those colors you can't find a blue wood. Right. So I'll, with the American flag, I'll enhance it with a little blue dye. But overall, everything else is the natural colors. Like with the red woods, you can find red heart. Bloodwood is also pretty bright red, and even the green poplar is a nice color, like on this Christmas wreath, to get a little more of a Christmas feel. And then the spalted woods work great for Intarsia because there's so much you can use around the spalting. And then lately, this blue pine, everyone's been going crazy, and it's just, bugs do so much for Intarsia. But the blue pine is also called beetle kill pine. So you can see it on this seashore, even in the sky, there's drifts of gray coming through the pine background. It really adds a whole nother dimension. And then like on this little cat with the different stripes of gray. So there's a wide variety of colors, and then it's also playing with the grains in the wood too. So it's kind of like painting with wood, and then also has a sculptural relief effect. And then this one is box elder. It's lost some of its stripes, but it was.
I've seen that before.
Yeah, that one. I have 3 sons. I call it my 3 sons. I made this one 3 times. This one, and then I made one with the cross section of a log of pine, and that one I sent a picture to the CBS morning show, and about twice a year they'll show it and they'll let me know, oh, it's going to be on.
That's
that
where
may
I've
have been
seen
where
that. Yes. That's just marvelous. So like with the raccoon and the others, that's kind of a stock number for patterns that you've been making for years and selling to people that are interested in learning how to make a piece.
Right. So it's good. So when they buy a pattern, they get a photo of the finished piece, and then on the pattern I'll have some helpful hints and instructions, and then they pick out their own wood and make their own projects with that.
This looks just like a picture of something for the space flight. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. Well, that's what this is just a photograph, but we were contacted by NASA to do, it was the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing. So we were commissioned to make this piece and incorporate some of the moonwood from, well, moonwood, you've not heard of moonwood, I'm sure.
No, I haven't.
Well, it's actually some sycamore, but in front of the Kennedy Space Center, I forget which hurricane it was, one of their trees, the seeds from went up in a flight, and I think it was Apollo 14. And so they brought the seeds up and took them back down and planted them across the country. And NASA's Cape Canaral's sycamore tree was blown over by a hurricane. Wow. So they used pieces of that. That's what the sign. This is the moonwood, and the pole is moonwood, and then the little circle right there, I used some of the moonwood. And the rest of it, except for the blue in the flag, is all natural colors of the wood. And like I said, this is a photograph of the piece because it's on permanent display in Kennedy Space Center.
Well, you love animals, I can tell. We've got just a jungle scene here that is marvelous.
This was a pattern I developed after so many years of selling patterns. A couple of people were saying, hey, we need something more challenging. And so, okay, this is like, got 900 pieces, here you go.
Yeah, right. This is the ultimate jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, and then add those little mosaic pieces, which are dowels cut, just to kind of break up the smooth,
it's beautifully done.
Shaped pieces.
Well, Judy, this is just great work. I can't wait to see how you do it, and I know it's quite a process. But what was the process for you becoming an artist?
Well, we have to go way back.
All right.
So many trips with my parents to the art museum in Houston. It was a Sunday afternoon after church. We'd go to the museum. My mom liked to do photography, so she'd place us and take pictures. But I was always drawn to the sculptures, outside and inside. And in fact, one time they all left, and I was still looking at this one sculpture. I remember they came back frantically looking for me, and I was still there in awe. My dad always had a shop of some type. He was a freelance artist. Out of high school, I started working with him. So that's kind of how it started, and my job became taking his design and making it into a working pattern of sorts. So he would do the sketch, and this is what he would show to whether it was an architect or interior designer, and they would approve it, and then he'd bring it back, and then I would take these grid lines, and this is 6 inches is an inch, so I'd graph it out on the table and had big rolls of tracing paper, and I'd make one copy and make corrections and then roll another sheet over and make more corrections, and then we would use carbon paper to transfer each of the parts onto different pieces of wood. And then we'd glue it all down, and we'd go through gallons of glue.
And it was pretty flat at that time, the
Right.
assemblage of pieces of wood, is that right?
Right, and it was more heavily textured. There were some dimensional aspects, but they were not as fine-tuned as what they are now. So it was a really unique process to learn all these different pieces, but and most of them were huge too, or not huge compared to what I'm doing now, but 4x8, 4x6, and it went up from there. So I got this puzzle pattern mentality from designing or learning to make a pattern from a design.
Judy, over time you added texture and an emphasis on color and different woods. This is beautiful.
So this is the first stage of any project. At first it's all roughed in and then it gets more and more detailed. So when I was working with my dad, I started really studying some of the wood and different colors and grains, and the whole technique has developed to a point where I print the patterns on a very translucent paper so that I could study the grains. And there's one magazine article that came out with, she paints with wood, and I thought, well, that's really pretty accurate, because you are paying attention to the grain and you're trying to incorporate that grain like your brush strokes so that it kind of helps flow with the picture or piece that you're making. And you know, with marquetry, anything flat, they have to inlay all the shadows too. With the Intarsia being dimensional, I inlay some shadows, but I rely on the contouring to create shadows. So it's kind of works both ways. But the colors of the wood and that's what I really like about this, is just working with each different piece of wood. This is some spalted hackberry, and it was cut from, you know, a slice out of a log, and so you get the grain pattern as a circular pattern, but also the spalting is so unusual. Those are familiar with wood are used to seeing the long stripe, you know, the grain and a piece of spalted wood. But on this one, since you've got the log cut, you see the growth rings of the tree, that you get a whole completely different pattern. And instead of the long pieces of like this spalted wood over there, it's cut off, and it's perfect for like this bird, because this owl has that texture or colors in its feathers. So you have to become a wood collector too, because you never know. I'm so lucky because I've been doing it so long.
And ta-da, we have just a small part of her collection of cut-offs and things on display.
It's bountiful. We started out with using carbon paper, you know, and I would get you know, a couple of push pins and put the piece of I want to trace and trace around each line. But the problem with that is you had to trace this line accurately on the darker piece, and then again on the lighter piece that joins it. And it was you know, I had to really be careful. So it turns out it's easier to just have multiple copies of the pattern and then cut up each piece that's a different color. Like this one came from here. So this one, I've got the MLs for medium light wood, and the grain lines are these arrows. So all those I could cut out as one piece, and then I come back with a very small blade, scroll saw blade, and we'll separate them. So this one, then I put it on the wood with some repositionable adhesive, and but what's great about it is you can move your pattern pieces around till you find that best spot. When I was doing the carbon paper, it was kind of hard to figure that out, but now I could have, like, if I had lots of different pieces, I could move them all around, try to find the best grain. And then the numbering too, it's like, because we used to number each part, but having that on the pattern itself, you don't have to number the surface, but everything on the back of all these pieces has a number. Otherwise we would be in big trouble if we trying to put these pieces back together. Once this is all roughed in, I take the pieces apart, and then they're all detailed. And then each piece, after it's shaped and everything, we put 3 coats of finish on each piece. We try to keep it from the bottom because that's where it will be glued down. And most of the time I use a polyurethane wipe-on gel. It's real easy, and you don't have to be in a dust-free environment, and it's very forgiving. Some cases where I'm using some wood that's very temperamental to UV light, I've got some UV inhibitors that help some, but most of those woods, they're going to change colors over time. There's not a lot you can do about it. So it is finished, and it'll have a backing. This is just a temporary 1/4 inch, but it'll have a backing, so all the pieces are glued to that, not edge glued together. And a lot of times when I'll undercut some of these feathers where they're, you know, maybe it'll have a, from the back side, so the feather will look like it's flipping away from, you know, the backing. It'll come up. And it adds a little more element of dimension to the piece. So that part, if I have enough wood on the surface left to do it, but it works out good.
Judy, when did you realize that you were an artist?
You know, it started in junior high school in our first art classes where we were handed a piece of clay and we're making stuff, and I was making, I don't know, a turtle or something. It was really coming out like a turtle, and I started looking around and I thought, what's the matter with these kids? They just look like blobs of clay. You know, they're just not trying. And I thought, God, yours looks funny. I didn't say it to them, but I just started to notice that I see things a little differently than they do, that they just couldn't see. And who knows what they were thinking about mine. I didn't think about it that way. But I really started to realize that the way I grew up, my parents pointed so many things out, like those trips to the museum I brought up. And I just could see how I wanted it to look already in my mind before I started shaping it. I had the thought process, and I think that that's what they developed in me growing up, is the thought process. So I think a lot of it still can be learned, but I just started at a very young age learning how to see things and visualize in my mind what I want it to look like.
Later in the show, we'll head back to Judy Gale Roberts' workshop for more insight on Intarsia. Plus, make those pencil marks magically disappear without an eraser. You're watching the Highland Woodworker.
I'm just an average, down-to-earth woodworker. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably about a 5. But one place I score a perfect 10 is right here, and I plan on keeping all 10. That's why I have a SawStop table saw. And there's more. Plenty of power, superior dust collection, and absolute accuracy. These features have made it the best-selling cabinet saw in America. Let Highland Woodworking help you put a SawStop in your shop.
There's 4 words that Lee Tools lives by. 4 words that mean quality joinery to take your projects to the next level. Whether it's dovetails, box joints, or mortise and tenon. And we'll even help you clean up. Those 4 words: better tools, better results.
Well, just about every project requires some type of layout work, whether it's joinery or something as simple as the location of a hole. Now that means using a pencil to lay out the location. Of course, you need to get rid of those pencil marks once you're done, and I found that trying to erase them doesn't always work. The lines can still be seen, and even trying to sand through those, you could risk going through veneer on something like plywood. A simpler solution is to use some basic denatured alcohol. It's like a liquid eraser. All you need to do is grab a cloth, Get a little bit on there, and then just rub it around until the layout marks are gone. The nice thing about denatured alcohol is it won't raise the grain on something like veneer, and once it evaporates, you see the layout marks completely gone. It's a great solution to get rid of layout marks.
This is the Rikon 70-30-40 reversible, variable speed, 3 horsepower lathe with a motorized sliding bed. Let me take you on a tour. There's so many great features and benefits, like this control box that will move where you need to move it. It's got stop button, it's got a go button, and here is the variable speed. And also the lathe will reverse or go forward, and this is for something I'll show you just a little bit later, but you can put this box wherever it benefits you. The variable speed works off of these 3 pulleys, which are easy to change. It goes from 20 RPM up to 3,850 RPM with a lot of torque from that 3 horsepower motor. If you need indexing, you've got indexing right here. It'll snap into place and hold your work right where you need it. Also, there's a wheel here so that you can hand turn to get something in place, like feeding that chuck on. And right here, tell you what your RPMs are while it is turning. That is just wonderful. Well, let's take a look at the tool rest. Heavy 1-inch tool rest here. So you can buy other tool rests as long as they're 1 inch in diameter, and it will work wonderfully on this lathe. But this is a great tool rest in itself. One of the things I like is I can glide right along here to set a taper or to work. But let me show you what I really love. I'm going to pull this back a little bit, and we're going to make sure the bed is opened up, and we're going to expand it from 20 inches between centers to 40 inches. Take a look at this. Now, what good is this? Well, the benefit is you can turn a longer spindle, but you can also turn about a 15-inch platter from this center right here. You'll have a 15-inch radius there from the center of the platter, which means almost 30 inches can be turned right there. This is just so well thought out. And I just love doing this. Sometimes I just come into the shop and I watch it go back and forth. This is amazing engineering. Coming up, scroll sawing and sanding with Judy Gale Roberts. You're watching the Highland Woodworker. Whiteside Machine Company has been in business for over 30 years, providing customers with quality router bits. Fine Woodworking Magazine has declared Whiteside router bits best overall and best value when compared against 17 other brands. No matter the router application, they have the type and profile of carbide router bit you need. When you put a Whiteside router bit to work in your shop, it is guaranteed to make you smile. Highland Woodworking stocks a wide selection of Rikon power tools, known for their innovative design and rugged durability. Highland has sold thousands of Rikon's industry-leading bandsaws with sizes to fit every woodworking need, from the compact, affordable 10-inch model to competitively priced 14 and 18-inch models. Shop us also for Rikon's reliable planers, lathes, and professional low-speed grinder, all with an exceptional 5-year warranty. Rikon Power Tools. If you can't make it to Highland Woodworking in Atlanta, Georgia, you can shop online at highlandwoodworking.com. They're great at getting what you want to your shop quick. Let Highland's legendary wood slicer resaw blade help make it easy for you to get great results sawing thick lumber into thinner boards. The wood slicer is designed to cut much faster, smoother, and quieter than ordinary bandsaw blades. You'll be amazed at how smooth a surface you'll get with a wood slicer. Its variable tooth pattern greatly reduces noise and vibration. Order a wood slicer from Highland Woodworking for your bandsaw today. Judy, you must use a lot of scroll saw blades. Is there a particular size, or does it vary?
Well, it varies, but average the scroll saw blades, you know, the smaller the number, they go down to 200, and those are almost like your hair.
Really?
All the way up to 12. And we use a 3 and a 5 a lot, but we've been using 3s more. It depends a little bit on the wood too and how hard it is.
Yeah, that would make a difference.
It does. So if, like on this particular piece, I'd use a larger, like a 3 or a 5 to do cut these lines, and then to separate pieces that go back together, we'd use one of those 2/0 blades that are really fine. So it has a smaller curve, so less wood is lost with each cut. So then when we separate these, it's just a minimal amount of wood. And this one is separated, but you just can't see it now. So once I take this off of this piece, then I come back and these individual feathers will have some detail, so you'll see this ruffled, feathered look on his.
Oh yeah, you can
chest.
see.
Yeah, you can't see it, but it has, this is
a line there.
This goes right there. So once it's separated, you know, it'll get the little details. So now it's pretty much, you know, it looks like one big piece of wood. This pencil, believe it or not, is a very important tool for shaping. So what I do is I start in the background and I work my way up to the thicker pieces. So that way, like on the owl's feet, I mark a definite pencil line, so I know, you know, that if I stay on that, above that line, everything's gonna look right. But in this case, there's a feather on top of the foot, so I'm gonna sand it below that edge. And so I'll take the piece out, and as you know, we all know once you sand it off, you can't put it back, so we try to be careful. So sometimes I'll mark a goal line, like I want to take it down at least so it's a 1/16 of an inch under this feather. But down here, I want to stay above my line, so I'll make myself little notes, because it makes sense here, but then you'll walk over to the sander and then like, oh, what am I doing? You know. So I try to give myself as many cues and clues as possible, and so I'll take it over to, I have all these different varieties of sanders, but this is a nice little sander, and I could see, especially with all these little pieces. And what I like about this one, it's variable speed, so I can adjust the speed and depending on what the parts are. And since this one is just temporarily taped together, I try not to lose that part. But I'm watching my pencil line as I sand, and I know I want to get down below that one pencil line there. So.
And that normally
That
you'll
makes
be
a lot of
wearing a
difference.
mask, and you'll
Right,
have
and
dust
a
collection.
dust collector, yeah, I can see all the dust. But so that just shows you the little sander, you can see a little easier what you're doing. So, yeah, it's getting real dusty. So that kind of gives you an idea.
Yeah.
And this is one of the cases where I did add a little shadow to the foot. So, and then the bottom, I'll make marks on the surface. This is my high spot. And then I look at a picture of owl feet, and this is where the toes start to go back, so I'll watch my pencil line and keep gradually getting down, but staying above to that line there. So that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there it goes in there somehow. And, you know, I need to take down the wood a lot more on that side. But it's always good to put it back in place and just see your progress.
Yeah, kind of a check and balance as to
Right.
how you're doing.
It
Yeah.
seems like the farther away you get from the finished piece, the more apt you're going to over sand it.
Wow. Judy Gale Roberts, thank you.
Thank you.
Improve your woodworking experience. Sign up for Wood News Online, a monthly newsletter showcasing the latest news, tips, and classes Highland Woodworking has to offer. By signing up, you'll receive the latest episode of the Highland Woodworker, special store promotions, and Wood News Online delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up today.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Highland Woodworker. Be sure to check us out on social media as well. And until next time, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker.